Hello, all. Welcome back to All for United WFC. We've got a 2 hour, it might even go longer than that, special tonight. Our last show on the Euros. Obviously, we're wrapping it up. What better way, the legacy of the tournament? How is it going to impact United? That's why we've got our two big United fans, Ellie and John, joining us, and obviously Barry and Charlie will be across the 2 hours as well. So we're talking about United. We've got some new fans coming on to talk about their first experiences across the tournament. We've got some content creators coming on, and we've got a journalist as well to talk about the work across the tournament. We'll dive straight in because we are splitting this across 4 30-minute sections. I'm going to mess that up there. So I'll come to you first, John and Ellie. Obviously, we'll go in that order. So, John, I'll come to you first in terms of what, I guess, the overarching question in terms of what you think the impact of this tournament could have from a United standpoint. Do you expect there to be any, it sounds a bad way, I guess, saying knock-on effect, but do you think it will have an impact going into next season?
Yes, I do. I do. It's first time I've been on the Women's Channel since success, so pleasure to be on. Good evening, everyone. And I do think it will have an impact. I can see straight away from people I talk to who've never been to a women's game, if all of a sudden they are interested in going. And obviously, I think there's been an increase. Obviously, we sold our season tickets initially, and they've opened up the East Stand for the Reading game, and there's great appetite for it. Obviously, the clubs agreed to a bus to take people to LSV and that from Old Trafford, which is great news. And I do think, and I just got the sense during the whole tournament, even regardless whether England won it or not, I felt that there were people in the street, and then you go to the pub and that, you hear people talking about the Euros, which you wouldn't normally expect them to talk about women's football. And I just think it's had a massive knock-on effects, and they've achieved something that the men never have done in terms of winning the Euros. They've done on turf. They went one better than what the men did a year ago, and I just think that there is appetite for women's game. You just look at the attendances in WSL. You have pundits like Ian Wright saying, get down and watch LS. Go down to your local WSL team, buy tickets and everything. I do think it'll lead to an increase in attendances as a whole. So, and I think for United, I do think it'll grow the women's team. In that, obviously, was Parish, but the three main girls that we had in the tournament, they had superb tournaments. Everyone knows Tooney now. Everyone knows who Bruce. Which everyone knows who Marietta is. Like, right, you can come and see them play for United now, and I do think it will have a positive knock-on effect, and I can see us having an increase in attendance at LSV next season.
But yeah, I was trying to get to the unmute button then. And Ellie, I guess same question to yourself. I'll throw it in a little bit differently because John mentioned attendance there. Obviously, we talked about season tickets sold out there. Talking about the shuttle buses, obviously the Supporters Club did a great job in getting that up and running as well from Manchester to get to LSV. Do you expect to see an increase, Ellie, I guess, in attendances next season? Obviously, I know our first game is away from home, but particularly at LSV, can you see that increasing?
Yeah, of course, because you've seen all these attendances over the summer and over the tournament, and it's been fantastic. So many people coming to watch a women's game, and I've seen loads of us United fans at the England games, and not just the England games or like the Norway ones, like seeing all the other Reds. So I really do think, and I don't think there's really not any excuse this time for that. No one can make it because now they've really made an effort now putting shuttle buses on and everything. But I think there'll be an excuse saying about the weather, because obviously the weather does change now soon. It gets colder and everything. I think we all know about Academy Stadium as well. That's like the worst for this type of weather. But I just say to everyone, get down regardless, to watch a women's game, because honestly, I was in wow, like at how many people was actually there all summer. Even the ones at LSV, I've seen so many people there, and I didn't expect it to be that busy actually. But do you know what? I just think the women's game's growing and growing now, and that will have a massive impact on us at United, because obviously we've got Ella Toon, Russo, and Maren they've played their part this summer. So that's what I mean. Everyone want to come back and watch them three, because even I've been wearing my United shirt all over the Euros. I've had little girls and boys coming up to me saying, "Oh, are you a United women's fan?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then we've just got talking about where do they play and everything. So I mean, people are messaging to see where they're playing if they can get there. So it's really good. So I really do hope we have massive attendance on the Reading game.
Well, that's what we're going to want, isn't it? Is huge, huge attendances. But I do have to say, I can distinctly remember being sat on the other side of the great divide that is at LSV, considering purchasing a season ticket, and it was quite bad, really, because I could have purchased one all the way up till about January or February, and then the minute I tried to purchase one, it was a bit too late. So that was unlucky, and it led to some, begging, cap in hand, to try and get into the other side where the singing section and the atmosphere was. But if I'm not mistaken, this time there are no season tickets. It's gone. It's happened already. So you could potentially already argue that we're in a position where we're better off than we were last year, because the season tickets are gone. And I think that's really big. Now, the question is going to be with that one, is it just season tickets from people that have come and enjoyed being a Manchester United women's fan? And will the Euros have any effect on that? And I think the additional tickets, I think, certainly will. So I'd be surprised if there's no impact on the attendance at all, especially when you consider the success of the three ladies that were front and centre at Manchester United initially anyway. So I think we're in a really good position, looking for huge upticks. What would you say, Charlie? Did you go along with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I know there's, when we had the World Cup in 2019, I think it was Anton put a comment in that we saw attendances go up a bit and then they dropped off again. I think the difference this time that we have is the commercial involvement that's already there. So from bits and pieces like Sky Sports and the BBC, who already have those things in place that are already promoting it, which we didn't really have before. So the only promotion there was really before was the fact that there was a World Cup on. And it obviously always helps when your team wins. I also feel like the generated interest in this particular competition has been greater in this country than it was when England did fairly well in the World Cup before. I think what will also help United is, obviously, as well as United season tickets selling out, so have loads of other teams, and not just the teams that had Lionesses or other well-performing women's football, elite women's footballers in there. You look at Aston Villa. I can't remember if it was Aston Villa or Reading. One of them said they'd had a 249% increase in season ticket sales, which is mammoth, and also down to the Championship as well. Like Durham, there's talk about them having a record crowd, and this impact across the board will also then help things. If it was just one team that saw an influx in spectators, it probably wouldn't last, but because it's across the board, I think that really helps. And obviously Ellie and John have already touched upon the fact that thanks to obviously really good work from all sorts of people, that there are now transport systems in place that are going to help fans get to the LSV. Someone said to me before, asked me, I won't divulge who, how many parking spaces do you think there are at Old Trafford? And Connor was well out. I was closer, obviously, because we all know I'm good at predictions. And it was about 3,000. But 80,000 fans go there every week in spite of performances. So what they were saying was, if the transport links are good, people will go. If the product is good, they'll make the effort. And I think that's what's going to happen here. But if we move on, obviously, Barry, you very briefly talked about the really good performances of the Man United Lionesses that were part of the winning side. John, if I come to you first with this one, with the Man United players, the three Lionesses in particular, hitting new heights and the level of performance we saw from them, do you think it's fair that we expect that they carry that immediately into the new season? So what are you expecting from Mary Earps, from Russo, from Ella Toone?
Yeah, I expect them to grow in stature, which they have done this tournament. Obviously, we failed to get into the Champions League last couple of years. We haven't won a trophy either. And I think the fact that they can come into that dressing room, three crucial players for the team as well, with a winner's medal around their neck, it will add great value to the team, that they know how to win a tournament, and this can make an almighty difference for the team. And that you look at some players who we glorify, like Ona, for example. She's brilliant, but she's not won anything. I think the fact that they are winners now, they can grow as people. They can grow on the pitch. They're more influential than that, and they know what it takes to be successful now. Albeit it is at international level, I do think that, and they're still, particularly Tony Russo, they're still relatively young in their careers, and I think Russo touched upon, like, now I've tasted success, I want to do it more now. And I think it'll give them a boost to, look at pursuing further. Obviously, we brought players in there. We've also brought Paris in. She's a European. I know she wasn't as influential in the Euros and that, but she knows what success means. And I do personally think that it adds great confidence once you've won one thing, and once you win one thing, you want to win 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and I think that'll bring the hunger and the desire. And no town, they'll also look at, in particular, Mary Earps. I'll stress that when you look at closing out games, when you think our weaknesses last season, well, it wasn't closing out games, the number of late goals we conceded, all that. But you look in particular at how the defence, the midfield, and Mary Earps as a goalkeeper, how they closed the game out. Against Germany in the final, against Spain in the quarterfinals, that will give them great confidence. They know how to do it now, and that can translate into the team now. And I do personally think they will grow as people, and I think they'll become even better players for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a big one, isn't it? Isn't it, John? The fact that they came on and had huge impacts and had to sort of produce. They didn't start from the beginning of a game, but they had to come in and in some cases change games for the benefit of the national side, which is obviously huge. Ellie, what are your expectations for those 3 particular players going forward into the new season?
Well, what I think they'll go into the new season with a lot of confidence, because they're obviously European champions now, and it'll be good experience for the other girls as well, knowing that they've got the European champions now on the team. They'll probably go in now. Mary will go in with a lot of confidence that she can remain there, the one in the net. And then Ella Toon and Leslie Russo, they can bring all their experience back to the club, I hope, because they've been outstanding off the bench this summer. So knowing that they start at the club anyway, I think they'll just thrive this season. And I hope there's more to come for Ella Toon, those goals, and Russo. And yeah, I just hope they'll come back confident as ever, and they'll give everything to the other girls as well, experience, so because they know now what it takes to win. So they'll want to come in a new season and win them trophies for us. So that's what I hope happens.
No, 100%. I do agree with that, actually. And I think, Charlie, when we spoke to Phil last Thursday, we were talking about these players are almost like new signings now, because they're coming back complete. We're going to get onto it in a second, because Sporty, I can see your comment talking about the media now, particularly around, we've seen it with Tooney very recently, and the different expectations. So I am going to come back to this comment in a second. But there's a question that I just want to throw to both of you very briefly, John and Ellie, if you want to answer this one. It's talking about expectation. And it's from our good friend Sang, who always comes up with a banging comment to throw in. Will this expectation bring unwanted pressure? What if we fail to break the top 3? Will the fans again? And John, I'll throw that over to you first.
I mean, there's always a risk, not just with the United players, but I think the England players in general, very few of England's squad were household names, and that maybe a couple, maybe you'd think are famous in the women's game. But now that the whole country is seeing them play, it will bring greater pressure on them. They will get more brand deals. Their faces will appear on more posters and more videos across the country. And I do personally think there is a risk to some, not necessarily, it can apply to the United players, but it can also be, to the squad in general, where I do think it might mean, like, people will look at their stories, and I do think the media exposure, they wouldn't have been used to this kind of media exposure, and I think it's a duty from not just the clubs but the FA to protect these players and to prepare them for, what they've done now has, massively benefits the women's game, but you've got to allow them to how to play with the media now that they're more exposed. And that I do think with players, you look at Russo, for example, a new contract and all that, she has greater influence now. She can say, right, I've won something now, and it's not, I'm not going to say they're going to get bigger. They do come across as down to earth people, but when you win, it can change your personality at times. And I do think she has every right to say, well, I deserve a better contract now, and if you don't give me one, I'll be off at the end of the season. I do think now that there needs to be, and I think they will stay grounded in that, and that it will lead to confidence in that, but it will mean more exposure. I think there's also risk and benefits to all that. So, yes, you got to make sure that they do stay grounded in that, but nonetheless continue to flourish as players.
Yeah, and Ellie, just throwing that same question over to yourself in terms of, do you think this extra pressure might be unwanted, and the expectation there as well?
Maybe, because people might say, oh yeah, like at Tottenham way, oh yeah, that's it, that Ellie gonna bag like 3 goals in one game. She won't, she won't be like really slow coming back into the game, but you can't expect her to come straight in and like score those goals. Like, I know we've all seen a different side to her in the Euros. She scored coming off the bench, but yeah, maybe it might be a bit of a pressure point, because some fans might think, yeah, let's go, they're coming back, Russo and Ellen, that's it, they can do it now, they can score those goals in the first game. No, it's about being patient, really, being patient with them. Like, say if they come back and they don't score like 1 or 2 goals for like 3 games, oh well, just be patient, because they've come back for the club. I know they've done really good for country, but they're at the club now with the other girls, so it will it'll take time to get used to as well, because obviously there's new players there and new girls, so it will take time. So I just say it's about patience when they come back. So obviously I just don't want the new fans to expect a load off in like the first game, because obviously it might not happen. They might come in and do a few assists and all that. Yeah, and I do hope they do score in the first game, but I just wouldn't have the hope like of all the new fans that, yeah, Russo and Tuna going to score first game and all that.
I think that seems fair enough. And I think the thing that I like most about all of this is that we were talking a lot about having winners. We were talking about having experience in the side. And I mentioned this the other day when we had our Nikita Paris conversation, Connor, which was that we've actually now got some homegrown winners, effectively, because we've got Tooney, we've got Russo, we've got Earps, and yes, we brought in Paris as well, who's around that. But I think also, as much as we can be really proud of what that does for us and how that helps, they're going to learn now what comes with that, and they'll learn how to deal with those expectations and how to deal with the pressure. And again, I'm going to say it because I said it on Saturday and I think it's true. The pressure in that game against Germany was immense. The pressure they've had on them for the entirety of the tournament was immense. This was a home domestic tournament, and with more and more success came more and more pressure and more expectation, more eyes were on them. And I actually think it was really tough for these girls, because it almost felt at times like the future of women's football was literally on their backs. You were getting people saying if they don't win it, then that could be game over effectively. It won't have the impact or the legacy that it could have potentially had. And I think, they've done exactly what they needed to do. They went and won it, which basically shut everybody up, because, it didn't matter what anybody else thought about it. So I actually think the homegrown bit there is good. And we're not even mentioning some of the other players who took part. Jackie Gronin did quite well and got a bit further on. It's probably best not to talk too much about the Norwegians because they didn't have the best tournament as a whole. But we know that the talent and the experience is there as well. And of course, Honor, only exited because of the British girls there as well. So I think it's quite important that we do mention that. But we said as well that they've become household names, and that was something that John, I know you alluded to there. And I mean, it's happening. You can barely go anywhere now without seeing them. Russo's back kill, Tooney's lob, his saves. We're seeing it all. We're seeing absolutely everything with that. And when we're talking about a growth of the game and a legacy of the game, the fact that you can now mention players that have played for Manchester United women and have other people know who they are. I mean, I had my nephew while we were up in Scotland. We watched the football game, obviously the final, and we're walking through the streets of Stirling, and all of a sudden he starts going, and I like it, and he starts singing Tony and Leslie Russo. Now he's a United fan because he's not an idiot, but he's singing these songs about people that he barely knew really before the tournament, only through his mad uncle Bazza going to the matches and things. So for you, John and Ellie, how important is it that we now have household names? They may not necessarily be at the level of Ronaldo in terms of that, but they're big names.
Yeah, I think it's massive for the women's game in general that you finally have women getting recognised for their achievements in the sporting context in football. And I think it is massive for the club because it can attract interest. I'm not, when you look at the male side of things, I don't particularly like his player FC things, but there are certain fans who follow players like Ronaldo, follow Bruno, follow Rashford, follow Pogba, players like that. I do think he'll attract a lot of fans who weren't interested in women's football to now think, oh, I love that Ella Toon, I love that Leslie Russo. I'm going to follow Manchester United because they play for them, because I love the way they play it, and it meant so much to me. When you look at particularly like what it's done for young children, looking at, particularly young girls, they will idolise Ella Toon and Leslie Russo, and not just them, they'll idolise, Chloe Kelly and players like that. And I do think it is massive that they've had that exposure now, and they will, as a result, it will bring an increase in crowds. It will indeed bring more pressure to the team, to them as individuals, but nonetheless, it will allow them to grow as people, as I mentioned. And I do think that it's for women's football in general, I think it's wonderful to see. I think it will also mean that players down the line, I think it was you, Charlie, put in the our social chat before about there was one player who's got, won, a contract, and they got higher than what the men's team did because he's actually won the Euros, that kind of thing. And I just think it's something like that where they should get rewarded. I do think they will.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's one of those things, it's just going to come hand in hand with it, isn't it? If we want women's football to grow, the players are going to be in the media spotlight, and that's just how it is. And it's just how it's managed. But what I would like to sort of finish this segment with, and I think I will come to Connor first, just briefly, try and keep it below a minute, guys, because he always drops these sort of questions on us, see Barry's reaction all the time. Is what is your moment of the tournament? So moment of the tournament, things that you will never forget. So if someone walks up to you in 5 years' time and says, Women's Euros 2022, what's the first thing you think of? Connor?
I'm going to ask everyone this question, I think, as we go on. Crikey. I'm not going to go through and list them because I know that everyone else is probably going to pick a moment. I'm just going to say Tooney's goal in the final, purely because the game's on a knife edge. It's a United girl. I don't think you're going to get a more mank girl than Ella Toon. So, yeah, I think probably her goal in the final, just because of what it meant. It's like I said, it's a United girl. As people know, I'm not a massive international fan. So seeing a United player doing it on that stage, yeah, I don't think you can look past that one.
No. Bazza, what about you?
I wasn't expecting to come in so soon. I was very much thinking of the Tooney one, to be brutally honest with you, because I went mad. I was absolutely loopy at that point. My voice went a bit hoarse. But it was interesting the way you worded the question, because when you worded the question the way you did, it actually changed my mind, because the first thing that I think of when I think of the Euros now actually isn't Tooney's goal as much as I enjoyed it. It was Leslie Russo's. That back heel, it's just the more you watch it, it's mad. That's got no right going into the back of the net, let alone to be attempted. And she did. And it was just absolutely brilliant. And I think, we talk about household names. I think that really cemented the household name of Alessia Russo with everything that she did coming off the bench. So for me, it's, Leslie Russo.
Nice. And then John, we'll come to you, and then Ellie, if you jump in afterwards, and then we'll save the best till last, which is me.
There's a couple of moments Perrin kind of picked mine, but I'm actually gonna go. I think that save the Dutch goalkeeper made in supper time in the France game. That was a magnificent save. I thought that moment. But I actually think I am gonna go for Tooney's goal against Spain because of the assist from Russo, because England were obviously on the back foot. We looked like we were going out. Spain were playing as though they were seeing up the game. And I just think that moment changed everything for England, for the tournament and everything. And it's the loudest I've screamed for a goal ever for United or England in women's football. I literally screamed my flat down for that moment. So I'm going to say that was my moment of the tournament.
So my moment, I would have said goals or anything like that, but you know what touched me the most this tournament was that little girl Tez. Honestly, when I seen her on BBC, when I seen her in that stadium get up and dance like that, I thought, you are one little legend. And I think it's even better knowing she's a United fan. She's a fan of Russo and Mary. So that is my number one highlight over this summer. It's that little Tez. She's amazing. So credit to Tez. Oh, she's amazing. She's my inspiration. She's started out now.
Well, that was it as well, though, wasn't it, Ellie? That's what it was all about, really. It was a sort of that reaction from her is what you want, that investment. For me, can you pop Connor, I think, was it Sang put a comment up about Mary's save when we were 1-0 down to Spain. Obviously, I could say any of the goals scored by the Man United women, or Beth Mead's one against Norway where she just sort of ran around all of the defenders and slotted in. But it was that moment when it looked like it was going to be a cross, and then it became a shot out of nowhere. And the fact that it was Mary Earps who'd been sort of picked out as the one to question her place. And I think if we'd gone 2-0 down there would have been no coming back from that at that point. And that is the sign of an elite goalkeeper, is that you don't have to do loads. Like you think about how much she has to do for Man United, probably more than we wanted to have to do. But for England, it was very little. And the times when she was called upon, she was out of this world. And it was that save, I think I embarrassed my brother a bit, because that was the game he came to with me. I just turned around and I was just like, that's why she's England's number one. And for me, that was the same reaction. I reacted as, not violently, vehemently, can we call it, as I did for Tooney's goal or any other goal by any other Lioness. It was that, because if she doesn't save that, all of those moments we've just discussed, of the people that have come before, they wouldn't have happened, because I think we would have been out of the competition. So for me, it's that save.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, 100%. I tend to agree with that as well. John, Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. You'll probably see both of these two across the week on the fans forum or whatever it might be that we've got planned for the rest of the week, because we've got a new signing on the way. So we don't know when that's going to be announced. Tomorrow, Wednesday. They might even throw a Saturday announcement at us like they did last weekend. So who knows? But
probably when they dealt with signing a couple of bad players for the men's team, probably.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about them. Just make sure you're following John and Ellie. You've both been fantastic. We're going to rotate around. and bring in.
Can I just shout out? We got a show on the men's channel as well. Anything goes at 9 o'clock tonight. So if you go over, you can watch the end of this and then jump over to the men's channel after. So
Yeah. If we've cheered you up too much and you feel like you need some depressing, over we go. Let's talk about them.
That's a way to sell a show. God, Ben's going to kill me for that. Anyway, thanks for coming on. We're going to rotate this around and bring in another fan from the men's side who is not going to have been happy with the weekend's results either, I don't think, being a Leicester fan. Becky, thanks for joining us. Firstly,
Thanks for having me.
Oh, there we go. Sound all works. That's always a good starting point. I'll throw it over to yourself first, then, in terms of before we open this up for a wider chat. In terms of obviously, me and you have spoke for a while now. I know back and forth about the women's game. Obviously, I told you last season how obviously involved I was with United Women. What I guess drew you this summer to watching the Euros as a starting point?
It's a weird one for me, really, because I don't have any particular. This is what's drawn me in. I can't really think of something in particular, and I think I've said to you before. In the past, I've kind of even been. I don't like to say actively against, because I'm not really actively against anything, but I have been a bit more like just not bothered about women's football. I play football, so people always thought, oh, she must really be into women's football, but I've just never been into it. But then this summer, I was like, I'll watch one of the games. I want to be into it because I want to back it, because I'm someone and have known all those struggles that all people have spoke about as a woman playing football or as a girl playing football when they're growing up. But I think a big thing for me about it this summer was the team seemed really relatable. And obviously not just because I've played football, there's something about it that just seemed like a really like real friends, fun, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what's drew me in. And then I've just fully joined on the hype. Oh, nearly dropped my phone. I've just joined into the hype. Like, I think it was great seeing everyone getting involved and getting excited, and I just kind of rode the wave, and really enjoyed it.
Do you know what, I really agree with that. You just mentioned something, Becky, there to do about when you were watching them play. Like, I think historically, because I watched a lot of men's football as well, when you watch England, it's kind of felt like there's been factions in there. And I think the players have been quite open with that it's a team full of players from sort of league squads, and they're kind of not really together in the way that they should be. And I think I said in a show earlier in the week, it's never felt like that with this team from the first game. It didn't feel like, all right, you were watching a team that had some Man United players, some Man City players, some Chelsea players. It didn't feel like that. It just felt like you were watching an England side, and they were all completely like in it together. And that I watch women's football anyway, and I've always supported England as a national team, but haven't been as rabid about it as I have been this summer. Yeah. And I do think it's how the teams come across that got me in even more. I don't know what you think, like Connor, because I know you're not massive internationally wise, but you even said that by the end you were like, oh, I'm actually really, really pleased that this has happened. I don't know what you felt like watching England women, whether you felt that sort of camaraderie between them. Was that to me or to Becky?
Yeah. I think for me, you are right. I think it's different in the women's game. I think you could tell with the team. And I do think the England men's side is getting there. I think you look at this current squad, I think it is getting there. For me, as on a personal level, I just still can't get over that. I'm getting there. I'm trying to get over that personal barrier that it's a City player. I can't get over that just yet. But you are right. Obviously, I was in our group chat afterwards. As soon as that final whistle, I was just watching them like, I'm really happy for him, because I think that has done more for the game as a whole, but also just seeing the reactions. Now, they were never going to win it and just go, oh, well, we've won it. It was always going to be ecstatic, but I think actually seeing it made a big difference, rather than actually the thought of England winning it to start. I was like, if they win it, great, whatever. But towards the end, it was like, oh, wow, like that's pretty incredible what they've just gone on and done. And not only that, I think the football they played across the tournament was pretty incredible. And I get actually just throwing this back to yourself, Becky, very quickly. Is that what kept you interested in the tournament, that England were going far, or would you have watched it, do you think, anyway? If England had got knocked out to Spain, because it was looking likely, for 70 odd minutes, do you think you would have watched on further from that, or do you think you might have stopped watching when England got knocked out?
I think that England being in there definitely helps. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I don't think I'd have been as invested because I was actively supporting England, but I do think that generally the general play of the whole tournament, because I did watch other games, not just England games. Like, I made a point of being like, when's the England game on? I want to watch it. But actually I watched some of the other ones, and I think that the quality, and like you were saying about the type of football, like, I'm a men's Leicester fan, and we play such slow football sometimes that I get frustrated, and it was a breath of fresh air to see the quicker football, the positive football, particularly from England. And I think that was something that kept me in England-wise. But I do think, like, once I was invested, then I would have kind of carried on the whole way. And I think that's just kind of a testament to how much the women's game has improved. And obviously I don't want to talk as if I watched loads previously, because I didn't, but that probably held me off a bit in the past, because I used to have that classic thing that as women's fans, you've probably heard so many times, like the goalkeepers are not at the right level and the game isn't as the best quality. But actually that was the things that really kind of surprised me and actually got me more into it, because that had got so much better. Well, so I say so much better, I'm holding my hands up, that my perception to what it actually was when I properly invested was so much was class.
Connor sent you the script, didn't he? Because that was the next thing we were going to ask.
I was just typing in our private chat. I bet that was your question.
But was that the Euros was the first women's football that you actually had the chance to watch?
Properly. Like, I've watched in the past. I've watched a lot of women's football of lower levels because I've played all my life, and I've watched games now and again, and I've just kind of rode the coattails of being a men's football fan and just been like, no, women's football's no good, because it's easy when you're part of that kind of crowd that everyone says that, so you just go along with it.
Absolutely. And I think all of us at some point sat here, I mean, cause it was interesting, we were having a chat whilst we were thinking of the ideas for this show, and I was just talking to Connor about it today, saying that actually we're all new fans of women's football, because we've only really got into it in the last sort of 12, 16 months, to be honest with you. I've watched a lot of Man United women on the telly, but that was about it, really. And you said just towards the end of what you were saying there that you were surprised by some of the bits and pieces. The fact that, as you say, there's often the trope that goes around that the goalkeepers are too small and maybe we need to make the goals a bit smaller. And actually, it's just not the case, is it? When you actually get invested in it and you feel like, I've always said it, once you're invested in a side, it actually doesn't matter whether it's women's football, men's football, basketball, whatever it is. Once you've got an interest in it, that hook, it hooks you in almost for life, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually you saying that about once you're invested and that kind of thing is a really big thing, because I think actually being there live as well makes a big kind of difference, because I've watched loads of football, men's, women's, whatever, over the years, and I go and watch the Leicester men's at home and away, and being there so much better. And that was the same for the game that I made it to in the Euros. I was just like, it really hit home the quality. So even though, like saying about you're invested regardless, it actually hit home for me the other way, that I wasn't like, oh, the quality's not that good, but I'm invested. I was like, I'm invested and the quality's really good and even better than I thought it was going to be, because I was like just seeing it there. And I think for me personally, because I play, it really, really hits home, because I'm like, wow, like I know how hard and how good that is in comparison to the level that I play at.
Sorry, just very quickly, I know Charlie, you want to jump in. You picked a good game as well, because I think England-Sweden, right? You went to?
Very, very, very good. It was
you saw a United masterclass, because you saw Mary Earps' brilliant saves and you saw Russo's goal at the tournament as well. So you certainly picked a good one. Sorry, Charlie, I know you wanted to jump in on that.
No, so it was just what Becky was talking about with regards to the quality of it. And I'm wondering if perhaps, obviously, we've wanted women's football to sort of get more recognition. I wonder if perhaps now was actually the right time for it to happen. Now was the right time for this tournament for it to kick on, because the quality of it is so much better. I went to a few, I watched lots of it, but I went to a few games of this tournament, Becky, with people that hadn't really been before. And the first thing they commented on was things to do with, oh, the goalkeeping's better than last time I watched it 5 years ago. Maybe we don't need to make the goals smaller. And oh, they are quite quick. Oh, that manager's using tactics. And I wonder if perhaps if we tried to push this 10 years ago, and I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, because if we pushed it 10 years ago, they might have got more funding, it might have been better. But maybe now that they are elite and increasingly full-time, this was the right time for this sort of influx of interest to happen, because it would have been really hard trying to push it 10 years ago when it probably wasn't where it should be through no fault of its own. And Becca, I'd like to get into the nitty-gritty, if that's okay. What when you said when you went and watched that game, you were like really impressed by the quality of it all. Was there a specific element of the performance of the players or the coaches that was kind of, having been there live, that was sort of way above where you expected it to be?
You know what, there was a lot, and I think that's what really kind of, I went with a friend. Well, I went with a few people. I went with a friend that I go to all the men's games with, and I think sometimes I kind of went expecting to see a distinct difference between men's and women's, and actually I was just like, it was just the kind of small things, like Connor has mentioned that save for Mary, and when you were all talking about your moment of the tournament, weirdly that was the one that came in my head. I thought it's obvious to say the back heel, and I always thought I'd pick one that I was at, but that save, I have moments like that, and I'm like, that save now, they're going to win, even though it felt pretty comfortable. But that's going off on a tangent slightly. I think it was one, the speed of the game, which I touched on earlier. Like, I think that confidence on the ball, the moving it quick, like Williamson is so calm. Like, from someone that plays football, that's something that I find so frustrating, that people panic. And I think in my head, I probably went thinking it's going to be slower. It's going to be, people might just panic. And I have seen that of games I've watched on TV. And this is probably those 5 years ago, or whatever, when the thing wasn't, when it probably was at a bit of a lower level. But it just didn't, even for me, it didn't feel any different to the men's. And I'm finding myself, I actually am getting annoyed with myself comparing men's and women's, because I get really angry when people make a point of saying comparing men's and women's football. I'm just like, you can enjoy both. Like, you don't need to have that. But I think that's a positive for that game and for the women's game, that actually there's not, that it wasn't like, it felt of a high quality, like it felt of that level. And like you say, it's becoming more kind of elite and all that, and full time, and you can really tell. But in terms of specifics, it was more those small little things, like little runs, little plays, like how people were kind of just were at, and the speed of it was so good.
Yeah, good. I think I'm 100% with you there. I think also there's a bombard in here, Becky. Obviously, we speak to you all the time, so it's nice to get someone else who you don't speak to so much. It was really nice. Obviously, you watched some games at home, and then you were at a game, and in England one specifically. There's also been a bit of an issue with maybe what the atmosphere, or how the atmosphere is perceived to be at elite female football games. How did you find that at the game you were literally at? What did you make of the atmosphere? Did it feel maybe not as special, or did it feel as special? Like, how did you find that?
It was really, really good. I thought it's obviously, and I think generally tournament football, you'll have it where there's just pockets. It's not like, say, home away, like you would get, say, in more domestic stuff. But it was that, again, was a kind of bought into that whole thing that I was saying, that I really enjoyed the whole kind of thing. It did. I think obviously people have their comments on clappers and whatnot, and they had that. But I think that kind of thing in that kind of setting is good and okay. And there's obviously a lot of young people there, which you need to kind of keep people engaged. And the one thing that I also noticed massively with the atmosphere is that the singing is very tuneful, because there's a lot more women there.
Oh, so you don't need to tell us about that. Some of the songs we've had to change from a United point of view is But I do think, just on the atmosphere, I know Barry's put a little comment in our private chat here talking about Mexican ways. They're not allowed anywhere. I'm sorry. I will die on that hill, as it's so to speak, because they're not allowed in any football ground as well. You certainly won't get me joining, as Charlie found out at Brighton, with the Mexican wave coming round, Austria, Norway, and me and Charlie just sat there, arms crossed, not looking at that. So, no, I don't think they're any part. But I think and Ellie's put the comment here, it's more of a, I like to speak to new people about it, because some games I've been to, and I think international football is a little bit toned down anyway compared to men's Euros aside last year, is a bit more mellow anyway than club football you'd find. But I do find it is more, I guess, inclusive is probably a bit of a strong word, but I think it is. I think that's might be the right word to use. It is more welcoming, particularly to families and that kind of environment. I wanted to follow it on in terms of next season. Now, obviously, the impact that with this whole show is about, like, the legacy of the Euros, what comes next, all of those kind of things. Obviously, I know you support Leicester. Some people support two teams, one for the men and something different for the women, but I don't think that'll be the case for you. Obviously, Leicester played quite a few of their games over at the King Power, and I think me and you have spoke before. They played some of their games. It's over in, like, closer to Burton, isn't it, or somewhere like that, a bit further away. Do you reckon you'll continue watching next season, obviously going into the WSL season, or do you think that it was just a good moment to have the tournament? And also, what's your thoughts, I guess, on the fact that we've had this tournament, now there's a 6-7 week gap until the start of the season, and most of the friendlies are behind closed doors as well?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting, because probably a couple of weeks before the tournament, I spoke to someone at the club. I just happened to bump into them, and they were like, oh, I was asking about where's signings and all this, and they said, oh, we're going to announce about the women's season tickets. And I genuinely was like, I just laughed and was just like, well, I'm not going to have that, am I? And then obviously there's been the tournament, there's getting more involved, etc. And genuinely the other week I knew how much they were because of that conversation, but I actually looked into it, and it's only probably, and I'll be honest, I don't think I'm suddenly going to go every week. Like, I'm not kind of jumping into that, but it did make me think, why can't I go and just show my support a bit more? I think it's good. I had a look, and there are a lot more games at the King Power this season. It's probably the main thing for me, is because I play and a lot of them are on Sundays, that would be the barrier for me personally. But actually, even in the past, people might have said, oh, I might go to the women's, and I probably would have been like, kind of, why are you going to do that? Whereas now I'd be like, oh yeah, go down, I can help you out getting tickets, whatever, that, just even that. So I might not personally, but I might kind of get someone else to go or recommend it. So it's definitely changed my view on it. Particularly, like, obviously it's a bit of a different thing being Leicester to, like, I know Leicester aren't too great, and I think that does put people off a bit, because they want that. Like, it's like you guys were saying about the women's, is kind of like, can go and enjoy the women's at the minute with the big hype about these players that have played in the Euros, particularly when the men maybe aren't doing so well. But no, I think it's definitely on my radar, which it wasn't. And I think it's a shame about the games being behind closed doors for the friendly. It's like, it just seems a waste, really. That could have been the perfect thing, get people straight in, and then they're ready, and they go, right, I'll go more for the season.
No, 100%. And before, I know we've got a couple of other questions, but I want to bring it was something that I was going to ask, actually, because I know me and Becky, me and you have spoken before, particularly last season. And the one thing I said to you about the women's game that I found was different, particularly from a United point of view, is the players are much more appreciative of the support. They go round every stand, clap you off. They'll always stand for hours, sometimes. Mary Earps, I feel sorry for her sometimes after games because she's there for so long. But when I spoke to you, it seems like the Leicester men's side is like that as well. Maybe not to that extent, but it's a bit more of a kind of together club. Just on that question there, do you think next season in the WSL, obviously we're hoping, obviously attendance is going to increase, there's more scrutiny now, there's more media, there's more everything on the game. Do you think the players will change their attitude, do you think? And particularly from a Leicester point of view, like I said, you mentioned before, the men's side is kind of like that anyway. What do you expect to see a change, or do you think that is going to continue as part of the game as well?
In terms of them, kind of that whole like being together type side of.
Yeah, kind of on that question there, in terms of like we saw, like, so I'm going to take Man United as an example. You saw yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does feel like as a whole club they're kind of trying to really back the women's a bit more. We've got some local like partnerships, and they're even kind of using the legacy of the Euros to say, obviously Leicester probably wouldn't do it on this side because we want to focus on Leicester, but their partnerships are going, do you want to see some of the players from the Euros? And that'll get more people down. And I know, like Leicester, obviously from being a smaller club, and they've got to build it up. Like, I know, like you say, as a whole club, there's a real kind of connection anyway. So I think actually it'll just, I think they, in any club, not just Leicester, any club would be daft to not show their appreciation, because that's probably that's like, we've had conversations, you love it because of that. So if they suddenly step back, maybe in 5, 10, 15 years, when it's got bigger and bigger, they might not be able to be quite so close. But right now, it needs it. And I think I can't imagine that it wouldn't.
That seems perfectly reasonable. You're a very reasonable person. We like reasonable people on this channel. I was just going to ask a little bit as well about, obviously, you went to the football, you enjoyed it, you went there live. How much was the ticket that you had for the match against Sweden?
I know it wasn't much, but I couldn't tell you for sure because I just paid my friend. I can't remember.
That's kind of what I was going to get at. The cost to get into a women's football match isn't extravagant and extortionate. It's a very affordable experience. And I just sort of wondered, from a new person's perspective, because I know we've all had our own opinions and thoughts on this, do you think the price made any difference to you? Do you think if it had been a 50, 60, 70, 80 pound ticket to go and watch that you still would have gone in as a new supporter? Or did the low price point actually make it a lot more easier for you to cross that threshold for the first time?
I think it's great. I think it does make it more accessible. I think it is really good that they continued the whole way through to keep it. I think I couldn't go to a few in the earlier stages that I wanted to. So I was kind of personally gone, you know what, I will pay out to go because it was semi-final, etc. But I think that it being that a lower price just made it much easier, and I think that's really important for the women's game. I think if I look at it for the women's at Leicester, is the price of like one match ticket for the men's, and that would make me go, you know what, I might just buy a season ticket, and even if I can't go every week, I'll do you know what I mean, like that way. And I think that's where it's going to be really key, that they keep it at an affordable price. And people that watch the Euros, if there's a game on, might go, you know what, it's only a £5 or a £10 or whatever it's going to be, and they'll kind of, it's a family day out then to get that continuing.
No, 100%. And talking about, sorry, Baron, but just before you jump back in, I want to throw us over to Charlie as well, actually, because you mentioned you went to some of the games as well with new fans, with new people that, you know, had maybe not gone before. And obviously, I know you've taken your family to a couple of games as well. Was that maybe a factor as well, the fact that it was quite affordable? Because I think if you were looking at, I don't even know what the men's Euros final would have been, but you're talking a hell of a lot of money, you know. But the fact that you're able to go with your family to this one, did price pay any kind of influence on that? And also just the impact it's had on them. I know you've got 2 young kids as well, whether it's had any impact on them moving forward.
Taking them has. So my son William is nearly 7, so he's got a season ticket for Man United Women as well next year. Loved the final. Absolutely terrified when Ella Toone scored. Terrified because it was so noisy. But then understood that actually everyone wasn't angry. Everyone was really pleased. So that was a good thing. And do you know what's interesting? It's actually followed on his little tablet and stuff. He's just downloaded a load of football games and started doing things like that. So it has put a seed of something in his head. As I'm such a massive fan, it wouldn't have bothered me, the cost. But I think generally for people, I think we're not talking about women's football being like a day out the park and a picnic. However, there is the massive market there for a family. And I think what Becky was saying there, that's when love of football starts for most people. It's when you're young. And if women's football can get them when they're young, and people are able to come as a family, then hopefully those people will then stay as they get older and they'll bring their children. That's what happens with men's football. It's just followed on. I sometimes think there's sort of like some people think that women football teams don't charge enough. And I used to be one of those, and some people think they charge too much. And I would actually say, I think the cost of the tickets isn't where the women's sides are going to make their revenue. Like, I know this women's side, we look at Bayern Munich, they charge very little because they say, well, we could charge all of our fans loads and we get an extra million, but we can haggle that in a player sale. So it doesn't really matter. Where the women's teams are going to make their revenue is from the sponsorship deals and the TV rights, which are now starting to come. And they're in a very good position where they're getting a lot more viewers than Rugby League, but Rugby League have got a 3 times bigger sponsorship deal from Sky Sports, so now they can use that. And I think for women's football at the moment, it's not about tripling the prices because the product's good. It's about getting people in there, because if people are in there and it's on Sky Sports and it's on the BBC and the grounds are full, the product's good anyway, in my opinion, but that makes the product look 1,000 times better. A goal goes viral, but it's an empty stand. That's all people are looking at. A goal goes viral and it's a full stand. That looks incredible, 10 times more than it is. So yeah, from a personal point of view, my child now wants to come. My little girl, maybe not so much because she's a little bit too small now to have a nice time. But for my son, yes. And I think ticket prices are probably where they should be, because we need to fill the stadium. The money will come from the TV rights.
I just wanted to jump in a little bit on that with Ellie's comment here, because again, you've both mentioned it. So Becky, just coming back to you again, just briefly with this one. If you've booked a ticket, let's say you've got a Sunday plan, you've booked a ticket to go and watch Leicester play, it's cost you the grand princely sum of about £7.50, and then all of a sudden somebody else says to you, oh, actually, how do you fancy coming out for lunch? Do you think you would be one of those people who might say, well, do you know what, it's only £7.50, don't worry about it, I'll go out with you because I haven't seen you for a while? Or do you think that actually you go, no, I've made a commitment to that?
I think personally, I would still go. I can see the point. There's a more important to accessible, keeping it cheap, and maybe you'll have it where a few people don't turn up that have bought a ticket. But as a general, like Charlie was just saying, it's better to have the cheaper standpoint and fill it and have a few miss out than have it expensive and have, say, a lot fewer take it up because it's more.
So I'll scramble around to get the unmute there. Just one final question before we look to wrap up and move on to the next section, because I can see our 2 next participants are ready and waiting to come on. But Becky, for yourself, I think you briefly mentioned this. I'm going to ask everyone this. Your favourite moment of the tournament?
Those 2, because I always think as soon as you ask that question, when I was at that game, that was always going to be one of my highlights. And I remember the back heel, I was literally just like, oh my god. Also, for me, very funny, the first goal, I thought it hadn't gone in because the net didn't ripple. So I was like this and everyone was celebrating. So that's something that I will remember. But mainly that save, I've had it in moments when I've watched Leicester games and we've had a save and then it's been like, I'm like, right, we're going to win now. And that was how I felt. It was like the comfort of, that's it, that's all we needed. We're going to see it through. And then obviously it was comfortable after that. So a couple, but all from that game, which probably says a lot, to be fair.
No, 100%. I don't think too many people are going to argue with that. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find, obviously, I know you're a Leicester fan. I hope to see you at Leicester games next season. But I know you do a lot of work on mental health and those kind of things as well. Where can people find your socials and things like that?
Yeah, so I saw that you guys all had your handle in the name, so I went with it and put mine on there as well. So it's Becky T LCFC, and yeah, I'm Instagram and Twitter as main places. So if anyone wants to chat, give me a shout.
Nice one. Be sure to do that. Thank you so much for coming on. I shall chat to you in a bit. We're going to rotate guests once again for the 3rd time today. What are we on now? We're just under the hour mark. Let's bring in Nancy and Alex. I'm going to rename Nancy to kind of your predictions queen, I think, because everything you said pre-tournament just seemed to happen. And even after the tournament, everything you said has kind of materialised. So I think from now on, golden rule, just listen to whatever Nancy says on these things.
I'll take that.
I'll take that happily. I'll take that title. Can't beat a compliment. What a way to be welcomed onto the podcast again. A compliment like that. I'm gonna red. I'm blushing and everything.
Two prediction queens we've got there now, Connor. That right-hand side is the place to be.
I know. It's as people don't know, Charlie obviously won our Euros prediction league. He didn't just win it with a game to spare. Was not even close. Was way out in front. So yeah, we've got two geniuses. Well, maybe three as well, because Alex, it's your first time on, I believe, on the channel. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I was going to say I'll take that.
So I'm going to dive straight into it, actually, and ask you both a question before we dive into some of the details and things like that. And Alex, I'll come to you first, and Nancy follow up on this. It's a very broad question. Did the tournament live up to expectations?
I would say yes. One, obviously we won home tournament. That's what we wanted. But two, I think the hype around it was so good. And we've seen even afterwards, I know there was a lot of tweets about not jumping on the bandwagon for the final, people fighting to get tickets. But actually, we kind of wanted a bit of that. That was the whole point of it, get people more involved. And obviously they have been. And even following the tournament, how quickly the USA game sold out. That's just such a clear evidence of, yes, the tournament did everything we wanted. Obviously, I still want more. There's a huge amount to do, but at least we've started raising that profile now.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say as well, when I was talking about the tournament and talking about like attendances, XYZ, it wasn't just about the England games, it was about all the games. And I think we can solidly say that the games got great attendances, even the ones where there weren't home nations playing. And that's fantastic, because that means that more people just wanted to see women's football across the board. It meant people were getting out of their houses, locally going to XYZ. I remember going to the Belgium-Iceland game in Manchester, and I remember, I think it was a dad with his two little boys, and his little boy was saying, I want to go to a game. And the dad was like, you want to go and watch women's football? And he's like, yeah, why not? I want to go. Like, stuff like that. So I think attendances rose. We saw the semis and the quarters, obviously the final, with really, really big attendances, which is amazing to see. And there has been a positive knock-on effect, like Alex has just said, and it is also moving out to the WSL, and the tickets that have been sold, the likes of Brighton, Arsenal, Chelsea, a few other clubs have said that they've, if not more than doubled their season ticket sales, their match sales, like the North London Derby. So it's positive. I'm just hoping I can still get myself a ticket when I want to go to a game, and there's a late change. I'm stressing a little bit.
Go on, Barry.
I was just going to say, I think, obviously on this channel we may not have seen Nancy, obviously before, we've not seen Alex before. I just wonder if you could give the people that watch this show a little bit of an idea as to what got you into content creation in the first place. What was it that made you set out to do the job that you're now doing in such a good way? Throwing that out there. We'll kick off with Alex again first, if that's all right.
All right. Well, this isn't something I ever imagined myself doing. I've always loved football ever since I started playing when I was like 6 years old, and that's just been my life growing up. And then more recently, a couple of years ago, I had to stop playing because I found out I had a heart condition, which obviously I was devastated about, because this was my life, my friends, my identity. I was a little bit lost for a bit, and then loads of the ex-players and ex-teammates and hashtag the club I was at as well, or still am at, put in money and bought me a camera. And it's kind of flown from there, really. I mean, I was only videoing our games for my team, hashtag, but the Euros kind of has given me that opportunity to branch out a bit, and it's been really fun. I've met a lot of people. I've learned a lot more about football, because I think you look at it in a different way. I've always played and watched football, but never kind of sat back and watched as not a player anymore. And who knows what's to come. Like Nancy said, like I'm one of those people that's now getting there and going to all the games. So yeah, we'll see what's more to come.
Yeah, I think with me, genuinely, I'd never, ever, ever planned to be a content creator. I was working on a platform that I'm no longer at. When I was there, the reason I got involved, I literally turned around and they said, why should we give you this job? And I said, because I care about the women's game and I know my stuff. And that was literally it. And now I still care about the women's game. I still know my stuff. And now I just throw my personality on it, create some fun content, and genuinely just have a laugh and build relationships. For me, I think the content that I put out is a bit different. I'm always trying to not only be respectful of people and what I'm capturing, but as well doing it from my own perspective and putting out what I want to see. As I say, I'm quite lucky because I'm a content creator, but I'm also a social media manager, and I'm heading up things at Indivisa now, and I'm so trusted, and I absolutely love what I'm doing there, and it enables me to do so many more things and getting my own content, creating content for platforms, but also creating content for the girls themselves. And yeah, it's just one of those. I never planned to do it, if I'm honest, and I just love it. I have fun with it. Ultimately, I think that's all I can say. I have fun and I enjoy myself, and I'll keep doing it until I don't have fun and I don't enjoy myself. And hopefully people keep listening to me and like what I do, because if that falls through, obviously I'll have to stop, because if no one's watching it, there's no point doing it, is there?
I think people who are watching it, I've got to say to both of you, I've just WhatsApp Connor, and I'm a little bit starstruck because Nancy, I knew who you were because you've been on the show before, but I didn't know you were this Alex, and I've been watching your videos and like howling because they're hilarious. You want to see Euros, absolutely laughing my head off and watching them after games because they're amazing. So it's nice to meet you. What I would like to know is, what was it like working on the tournament, like as well as being a fan? And also, obviously, I know, Nancy, you know some of the players as well, don't you? So sort of what was it like, the amalgamation of sort of those two things?
Honestly, I did not stop for a month, but I'm not complaining at all. Like, there's little segments throughout the month where people would chat to me and be like, Nance, how are you not knackered? How are you not this? How are you not that? And literally what I've just said, I love this game. I love promoting the women's game. Like, I don't think I could ever be in a position to moan or complain when I know hundreds of thousands of people would do a lot to be in my shoes. So I am so grateful every day for what I get to do, honestly. And even at times when I was tired, I just powered through. Like, I had like an energy drink or a coffee or like a couple hours sleep, and I was back to it. And I was so lucky I got to go to games with like a few players who were in like the under 23s or in the WSL and stuff, and just bouncing off them, bouncing off all the amazing people that I met. Like, I met some of the Arsenal girls who were fans, and honestly, like, they've become my really good mates. Like, I'd meet up with them and see them at different places, and like I'd buy them a drink and just have a chat with them. And like, even now I'll be at the, like, when the season comes around, I've already said to them like, oh, I'm coming to a game with you to watch a game. And they're like, you can't sit in the friends and family. I was like, no, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to be wearing a shirt. Like, I'm going to be there and present. And yeah, it's just amazing, not only to support my friends and watch them bring it home. Like, it's amazing to meet new people. And believe it or not, I can be quite shy and like nervous about approaching people, but everyone was so lovely. And I genuinely met and have stayed in contact with some amazing people. And that's what that the women's football community is about, not just the people on the pitch, but the people behind the scenes, behind the goal, behind the, like, in the fan zones and XYZ. And yeah, I just loved it. Honestly, like, it's probably the best month of my working life. I feel so blessed.
And what about you, Alex? Does it feel like work, Alex, or does it just feel like?
I'm not gonna lie, it's not really work. I work full time, but it's been a lot of fun. And like, for me, I feel like you just have to kind of find your own thing. And for me, that is just going and having a good time with my mates and getting the football side into it. And so that's probably what I do. It's a bit different. I don't know the players like Nancy does. I just do my own thing. I met Nancy for the first time the other day. That was great fun. But yeah, it's been a bit of a mad month, to be honest. I felt a bit the same afterwards. I felt I need a week away from this. But at the same time, I can't wait for the season to get started again. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't know whether I should feel guilty about this or not, but I felt more, obviously immediately after the final, I was buzzing. But in terms of the longevity of that buzz, I was more excited after the semi-final. I think because I knew the final was coming. And then after the final, obviously I was buzzing that we won. And then I was a bit like, oh, it's over. Like, I was a bit sad about it. But actually, the season is just around the corner. World Cup's next year. Who knows what I'll be doing this time next year.
You meant just very briefly, just a question that's just sprung to mind. So I was watching that your final vlog. I think it was the other day. And I think that's might have been when you first met up. Just very quickly, I don't know if you remember that vlog or watched it back. Is it a cap or not?
It's definitely a snapback. I don't know why I keep calling it a flatback.
A hat, a cap. It's the same thing. Wait, I recorded that, then I realized the camera was on me, and then I was like, I'm gonna look like a right not nice person. I was like, Alex, make sure I look good in my little 7-second.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is
Sorry,
gonna
I
go
had
on
to
a
put
few
it
ways.
The thing is, though, you're not wrong, because I'd rather it was a cap.
I made it look better. Look, people in the comments, tell me if the cat doesn't look better with a little bit of the beak a bit rounded.
I don't know how you did it, because I can't even bend it. Anyway, that's a snapback. That's all I'm saying.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of a cap that doesn't bend. I'm with you then, and it just doesn't.
I just made it.
It just does not fit me one iota.
Talking about freebies though, it's a nice bottle. I'm pretty excited about that.
Definitely is. So, girls, I just wanted to mention a little bit about the content creation, because obviously here at All for United, we've all been about, shockingly, Manchester United, especially the women's team. And Alex, you mentioned you deal with hashtag mainly and all of the work that's been going there in the WNL. With the content creation that you've been doing through the Euros, do you feel like that now you're expecting a wider audience? Because we've certainly seen some numbers jumping a little bit throughout the Euros in terms of people coming in. Do you both feel like you should, not expect, because it might be the wrong word, but there's hope that there's going to be a wider audience for you guys to get your stuff out there?
I mean, I don't know about you, Nancy, but most of what I've done so far is like the hashtag team. And so a lot of my subscribers are people that have come over from the men's channel. There's girls as well, but most of them have come from hashtags as a background rather than me, I think. That's just what I think. But actually, since doing the Euros, yeah, I've had a quite a big jump in subscribers. But not only that, because in your analytics, you can see all the new, like who's new that's watching. But actually, the comments have been definitely by a different group of people. And hopefully they're here to stay. And for me, the reason why I'm most excited about that isn't because of numbers or subscribers or whatever. It's because I've wanted more girls to watch it, or young boys, young girls, rather than just this age group maybe that's more into hashtag. I wanted to show, even from the beginning, my aim was to show young girls what it's like to play at a good standard, what it's like to be part of a women's team, in the changing rooms, in the dugout, not just what's on the pitch. And so hopefully, and I think it has already, this has started that journey, and I'm excited to see if that carries on or how it carries on into the season.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really honest, like in terms of like my following and in myself. Like I don't think I have a big following, if I'm being completely honest. Like if anything, don't get me wrong, I'm aware I have a following, and the people that follow me are amazing. Like I get some really, really lovely comments and messages, and I can be really rubbish at replying because I genuinely am really busy, but I do see all the comments and I do try and reply to messages like as and when I can. For me, like I think naturally I love what I do and I enjoy what I do, and if it can make people happy or inspire people or make them smile or get to know their favorite player or get to know me a little bit more, like they're probably not there for me, they're probably there to see the players. But like, yeah, like if my content is something that people enjoy, like it's great to have more people following me, because I think if anything, more people following me and engaging with my content means more opportunities for me, allowing them to get that content realistically, and that's the way it is. If brands see you've got a higher following, and I pride myself on being genuine and having that passion, and what you see is what you get with me. But ultimately, if your following's bigger, you get more opportunities. So yeah, if people want to follow me and help my followers go up so I can get more opportunities to give you lot what you want, like honestly, feel free. I'm gonna be real with it. But no, I love it. I love everyone that engages with me, likes my stuff, and sends me lovely comments. Honestly, I really, really do. And yeah, it's always really, really like amazing to see my followers go up, even if it's by 10 followers, or sometimes it could be a bit bigger. Like it's incredible, and it genuinely makes me really smile, because it means that I'm doing something right and people want to see what I'm doing.
That's brilliant. I've got to say, this is the first time, I think, actually, that the Southerners have outnumbered the Northerners. which really makes me so pleased. Feels like we've got a little bit of a takeover going on here for half an hour.
Are you counting me as a northerner?
Yeah, anything past Watford Gap for me, mate, I'm afraid. That's how it works. But I mean, I mentioned this because I actually live in Stevenage, and that's why I commented on one of your videos earlier about featuring the Steph Patchy, Alex, because obviously she plays for Stevenage Football Club. So I was lucky enough to get involved with that team last season. Started watching quite a lot during the WNL, and I know that hashtag just absolutely sent us to school in both of those games, which was very depressing, I have to say. But I bring that up because I know that one of the big selling points about hashtag and the way in which you presented yourself is that you've got those games on live. And so actually it was quite nice to watch the game against Billericay Town that was on at the end of the season as well, and to have that available to be able to watch if you couldn't get around there. And again, I mention this because we're talking about the legacy at the moment of the Euros. And I'm a little bit worried because we've had this really big explosion of interest in women's football. And at the moment, there seems like there's a lot of games that are being played behind closed doors during pre-season. It's almost as if the game seems to be dropping back into a little hole, hiding away from everybody. And I just kind of wondered really what you guys thought about that in terms of TV coverage, whether or not we need more of that, but also lower down the pyramid as well, because you've had some fantastic numbers. I know, Alex, from the hashtag TV, and some of those are fans. They're also fans of other teams as well. So, yeah, to both of you there, really, what do you think? Is it important that we get these matches out there for people to see so that they can become invested in the same way they have done during the Euros?
Yeah, I think you definitely want people watching, and the point of streaming them, I guess, is it's more accessible to a lot more people. They don't have to travel, and not everyone has the luxury of being able to travel and go and watch games. I'm just thinking about the reasons why. I guess some teams, I mean, we had one that we played behind closed doors, but only because it was 40 degrees and we didn't want people to have to travel. But I guess some teams, if they've got trialists, they don't want to show. I don't really know. I mean, sometimes for us, it's just that there's not enough people to get down to every game and film it. But yeah, I definitely think you need that accessibility there. And if possible, it should be open so that people can come and watch and keep that momentum going that we've massively built over the last month.
Would you go along with that, Nancy?
Yeah, I'd say I think the trialist one is a really, really good point because stuff like that does stay under wraps, and teams do try and keep it as in-house as possible, just out of, I think, respect for not only the player but also so that fans potentially don't put too much pressure on it, because that it can add a lot of pressure, especially if you're on trial and you've got loads of people watching you and expecting a lot of you. Like, I know I'd feel probably a bit more pressure. So I think that is a really, really good point to raise, Alex. I think as well, sometimes it's not the first teams going out during these pre-season friendlies, which, again, it's great to see the younger players. Like, I don't know if people see my tweets, but I'm always talking about teams tagging their younger players when they put pictures up of them or XYZ and, like, getting their names out there. But I think sometimes as well, because it's not a reflection of the teams that are going to be playing in the WSL, that might hold them back. But then you could argue that they put the final score up on social media anyway, so you see what the final score is, and you could see that if you was at a game. It might be down to cost and facilities. It could be down to potentially wanting it to be more so as a training game and room for development, so it's not actually a fully competitive game in that sense. Yeah, I mean, I'm not in a professional team setup. I can talk from experience of like a lower league setup. But yeah, those would be some of the reasons that I would think. But then again, some of the games you can actually go and see, but it doesn't say that you can. Like, even me the other day, I think I said to you, Alex, when hashtag played West Ham, I was like, oh, I would have come to that game if I knew about it not half an hour before. Do you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, there's a few different reasons, but we definitely need to do more stuff where you can see the games and they're accessible. Because I know even me, I'd watch games of the Championship on the FA Player when I could, if I couldn't get there, or I'd watch 3 or 4 games if I wouldn't go to a game one week, and I'd try and watch as much football as I can, really. So the more the merrier, especially if you've got mates playing in it. It's nice to watch them if you can't actually get down to it. I hope that answers your question.
It definitely does. Absolutely. Thank you so much. That mute button so far away. Connor, come on, mate. Get yourself back in the conversation, sitting there all quiet in the top corner.
I've got so many questions off the back of that. I need to choose which one. Very quickly, I'll come to a couple of the comments. Ellie's asking here, are you going to be doing content for the WSL next season? It's an open question to both of you.
I feel like Nancy obviously is.
100%. Of course I am. If anyone sees me, please come and say hello, because I promise you, I'm really nice. Like, literally, if you see me, just be like, hi, Nancy, I'm so-and-so. And I'll just be like, yo, what's going on? We'll have a little chat. Alex, back me up. I'm really nice.
Yeah, yeah, I was a bit scared. No, joking. No, she was really nice. I can vouch. I will definitely be going to some WSL games as well. I'd like to go see some championship games as well. But like, I saw someone commented, but it's just disappeared. I can't remember what their name was. It just came up at the bottom about wanting more content of like the championship and things like that. I mean, if you want tier 4 content, it's still great quality football. Like, comment, and subscribe. You know where it's at.
That is a beautiful.
I've got to back that up. Sorry, Connor, I've got to. I mean, I know that Charlie said she's seen it as well, but it is, and the level that you see even at tier 4, it's not that different. It's really not, and people do need to sort of get over that, because honestly, I'm loving life at Thomas tier 5 now because we got relegated. But you guys in tier 4, we'll be all good in tier 5.
No, and I can speak about tier 5 because I followed Starbridge last season, who were tier 5, and I know they blitzed the league and got far in the FA Cup as well. But yes, moving on back to the Euros itself. Nancy, you mentioned something there which it wasn't actually on the list, but it's something that's just sprung to mind. Something we spoke a little bit about in the first section in terms of the players now have gone from being very good footballers to now household names. Now, obviously, Nancy, I know you've been in and around, spoke to a couple of the players and things like that. Is there a concern that now the media, we've seen it with Tooney recently, some of the pictures of her on holiday and that kind of thing, following her around and whatever. Is there a worry now that, and what would you do, I guess, to protect some of these players that, you only have to look at some of their Twitter, some of their followings grew by 40, 50, 60,000 within a couple of hours. What would you do, I guess, to protect them from that media now that is going to be, I guess, on them? And because they are now household names rather than very, very good footballers.
Yeah, I think ultimately, when you break it down, to be completely honest, you can't really protect them. It comes with the exposure and people knowing who they are. In black and white, that's the answer. You can't actually protect them because paparazzi and XYZ, people who do what they do and get that sort of stuff. Like, for me, I would never take a picture or video of that anyway. That literally wouldn't be in my thoughts. But then to put it out and plaster it out, like, unfortunately, that's just some people's jobs, and that's what they're going to do because that's how they get paid. I think maybe clubs will give them more media training and give them those like tips and tricks in terms of what could happen, how they can prevent it, XYZ. But the thing is, they're just people. They're normal people. Like, literally, like when I see them and I chat to them, I don't go, "Oh, you're XYZ. You're a really good footballer." I'm like, "Oh, you're right, mate. Like, what are you saying? What's going on?" Like they're people. They have lives. Like, they have days off. They have breaks, and unfortunately, that's something that comes with them being household names. But you'd rather them be a household name and now be getting that recognition and maybe getting stopped a bit more and getting people like excited to meet them and noticing them. But yeah, that is something that comes with it. But I'd maybe say that clubs will give them training, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, it's, to me, they're just normal people who have normal lives and they're really good at football. Like, I still beat some of them at 2-touch, you know what I mean? Like, so no, I'm joking. I'd maybe give them a run for their money. I maybe won't beat them.
I was just going to say off the back of that as well, like, I totally agree about the media training, but hopefully as well, most clubs have a psychologist these days, don't they? Hopefully they've had some input from there as well. It would be interesting. I mean, I'm guessing they haven't done it during the Euros, but like the Chelsea documentary, if there was something like that to come out of this, they've been talking about more issues and like to do with like best endometriosis and things like that. It'd be interesting if there was some insight into this too, but maybe we'll just have to see what happens next year.
No, 100%. I definitely agree on the media train. I think particularly the bigger WSL clubs like United in particular. We know what the click rate and things like that just by mentioning the word Manchester United. So something I wanted to bring up, Nancy, because it's something you brought up on the Lionesses show when you mentioned it. When I knew you were coming on, obviously when we were speaking, I said, right, we've got to bring this back up because we said that we would after the Euros. Obviously, I saw your tweet about Gary Neville, the wonderful Gary Neville, when he tweeted about the Lionesses after the tournament. And something you mentioned, I hope I'm not twisting your words here, before the Euros, was you don't want to just see big brands jumping on it just because it's hyped up now and then just leaving it, I guess, after the Euros. So I guess the question is, in terms of what now, what next should the, because there was Alex Scott spoke brilliantly, I think, on BBC talking about there's a lot of teams or clubs and turning down the bigger stadiums when this was all proposed a few years ago. What are they saying now, kind of thing. Where do you stand on this in terms of some of the big deals that are now going to come players' way, but also you're looking at the WSL Championship and so on?
Yeah, you're always going to get people jumping on the bandwagon. Like, even for me to say, oh, I don't want to see it, like, it's going to happen. And do you know what? To be fair, like, people are going to jump on the bandwagon. And ultimately, if they're going to make sure when they are jumping on the bandwagon, they're doing it so that they can stay around, they can support the girls, they can actually help facilitate and aid areas and where they're missing out. And they're, again, going to stay around and they're going to be present and actually take some form of, we actually do care, and hold our hands up and say, look, we're jumping on a bit late, but now we do really want to make a change. I fully respect that. Like, if you're going to hold your hands up and say, yeah, we're late to the bandwagon, but we've now realized we can put money behind them, we can support this, that, and the other. Do you know what? Like, do it, because you've blatantly said that you're late to the party. But if you're just doing it to jump on the hype, honestly, like, people are going to suss you out. Like, the girls aren't silly, the teams aren't silly, the managers, the fans, XYZ. People know who have been about for XYZ amount of years and who genuinely care and who support the game, whether that be content creators, whether that be brands, whether that be male footballers, whether that be other female footballers, whether that be male teams. Like, the list goes on and on and on. Like, the girls aren't silly. They know who's there, who supports it, and who's just trying to get their piece of the pie. And teams aren't silly either, and I'm all for people getting on the bandwagon if they genuinely care and they can put their money where their mouth is. But for me, if they don't care and they're just doing it to be present, like, you're gonna get sussed out from the get-go. Like, people aren't silly. And I say that as someone who just cares about the game. Like, I'm not saying that as a professional, I'm just saying it as someone who genuinely cares, and you can spot it a mile off. It's like you can spot off a mile off when someone's doing content or doing stuff with clubs or players and they don't really care about the game. Like, I think everyone can. It's not hard to see, is it? Or suss out.
No, 100%. And same question, I guess, to yourself, really, Alex, if you've got anything to add off the back of that in terms of,
I don't think there's much to add off of that. But yeah, I agree in that, yes, we've talked about the bandwagon a lot. But if you're in it for the right reasons and, like you say, for the longevity, then fine, hold your hands up, and now's the time to get involved. And that's what we wanted out of this home Euros. But like you say, do it in the right way. And I think we mentioned about Gary Neville without going too much into individuals, but sometimes it's just in the way that it's said, even though you're congratulating, if it's a bit backhanded or sarcastic, then I'd rather you just didn't say anything at all. Be genuine or just don't bother.
Yeah, I actually, like, when he did, I like went back and found his tweet and like quoted it, and I was like, so you want to talk about a non-footballing side?
Check the receipts.
Yeah, like, but the thing is, I actually took time to find that tweet as well. But it's just, I'm just backing up what I say in it. Like, I really care about this game, and it's not just my job. Like, it really is my passion, and that's why I do it. I don't do it to get my flowers. I don't do it to be rich or be famous. You definitely don't work in women's football to be rich or famous. Like, I do it because I genuinely love this game, and I care about the people that are in this game, and that's not just the players, that's the people who put the hard work to grow the game. And yeah, I don't like, it's something I care about, so I'm going to speak up for what I care about.
I want to applaud that. I want to do like a round of applause, mate. I think you're right though. I think people will be able to tell the difference between who's got a superficial interest and who has a legitimate interest. I think we can trust people to be able to spot them a mile off. But my last question, the finale, the crescendo to finish that we've asked everyone, is just stripping everything away and viewing the tournament as a fan. If someone said to you in 5 years' time, what's your greatest moment as a fan from Euro 2022, what would you say? I'll give you a moment to think. I'll tell you what ours were if you didn't see them. So Connor went Tooney's lob, I think, in the final. Barry went Russo's back heel, and you can repeat, so don't worry if we're seeing your ideas. And mine was Mary's save when we were 1-0 down against Spain, when she tipped it or clawed it away from the bar when it looked like it could have been game over. So if we start with you, Alex, moment of the tournament.
Oh, that's tough because there's so many. I'm just thinking about, because I've done a lot of like filming stuff and obviously watching it back to edit it. I think for me, obviously the semi-final and the final was just mad. Oh no, actually, I've got it. I was going to say Norway goal after goal, but I know what it was. It wasn't even in one of the games. It was walking from the fan park to the semi-final in Sheffield behind the England bus, and it was absolutely tipping it down, and the band were on top of the bus, and we'd like driven up from work. We got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was just absolutely mental, and everyone was just singing and getting soaked and laughing. It was so much fun, and I've never done that before. I've never done a fan walk, and that is a bit I won't forget.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mine was from the Spain game, actually, but I'm gonna take mine and put a little spin on it. So have you ever noticed that Millie Bright does that, like when she's when they're like they come out and they're just about to take their team picture, they're in the lineup and that. I actually never really knew why she did it, and I was in front of a few family members because I was in a family stand for that one, and I took a picture because I saw someone doing that, and I think after however long it was, I actually realised that it was Millie's mum. And that's what they do. Well, from what I can see, that's what they do to each other before a game, and special moments like that. I know Millie's family mean untold to her, like all the other girls' family do. And I just thought that was really, really special. As someone who like has really good relationships with like my mum and my nan and my dad. Yeah, to see that, it was a really wholesome moment. And when I realized like why they do it and who was doing it, it sort of stripped back everything, and it reminds you of, again, humans being humans and those relationships and them connecting with each other from however far apart they are, and that's the way that they go into a match and show their love for each other. And yeah, I thought that was really, really special and potentially something that people didn't realize because I didn't, and I was there to see that moment and I captured it. And in one of the pictures I've got, like, you can see the hands doing that, and then I think a few of the players are in like just behind it, and it's quite a nice picture. So quite a nice like wholesome moment, I'd say.
I'm glad you said that, actually, because it is something a little bit different. Because it is very easy to pick, Tooney's goal or Russo's back heel or things like that. Moments like that, I think someone mentioned it earlier, didn't they? The little girl at Tess, wasn't it, that went on BBC? Someone mentioned her as well. Moments like that, I think, just to encapsulate what the tournament was about. Before we let you both go, then obviously I can't let you go without shouting out your socials and things like that. So, Alex, come to you first. Where can people find you if they want to follow some of your stuff? Hashtag as well.
I was just thinking, I can't remember if it's my Instagram or my Twitter that's got an underscore in. How bad is that? Anyway, my Instagram is Alex Bailess, which is my name, which is right there. And my Twitter is Alex_Bailess. But yeah, just search my name on YouTube. That's where most of my content is. I've not really caught up on TikTok just yet.
Mine is Nance Baker, like it is there. That's my Twitter and TikTok, and then my Instagram is just Nance Baker with an underscore at the end.
Sweet.
100%. Make sure you're checking out these two. Like I said, especially, like I said at the start, Nance's predictions were off the scale. So I might actually get you back on for the WSL predictions that we're going to be doing at the start of the season. I hope predict a lot of United wins, please.
Maybe I should just not do any more predictions and end on a high. Save myself the embarrassment.
Well, as long as you can predict some United wins and that materialises, I'll be very happy.
Hopefully,
happy
be
with
at
that
a
one.
few United games as well, whether that's at Lee Sports or away fixtures too. It's always a good time watching the girls play. So
100%. Well, we'll the three of us on the top row here will be at every single one. We're not going to miss a game this season, so we'll sure to see you there. Thank you both for coming on. We're going to rotate around again and get our final panelist on for the day. Kathryn, thank you very much for waiting. I know you've been sat there a little bit there. I guess just firstly, thanks for joining us. And also, I'm going to ask this question. I just asked Alex and Nancy this question in terms of, and I'll throw it over to you as well. Did the tournament, I guess, live up to your expectations and what you thought maybe going into this Euros?
I'd say so, yeah, definitely. I think it was a slow start initially. I think obviously we had the big crowd at Old Trafford, but because obviously England, the game wasn't fantastic. I think just from a journalist point of view, from my own sort of working and the coverage around it, I think that side of things was maybe a little bit slower until that Norway game, and suddenly it sort of went mad because we scored 8 goals and people would kind of predict us to maybe struggle in that game. Whereas I think maybe the first game, probably because of, as I say, how the first game kind of went, it was a little bit slower in the build up to that Norway game. And then once that game happened, it was like sort of took off. And again, with that, obviously the Northern Ireland game ended up being a bit more kind of off the pitch with Serena getting COVID. And obviously we'd already topped the group by that point. But come the quarter final, you could tell there was almost like it was weird because usually when the men are in tournaments, people get that nervous sort of feeling when it gets to like knockout stages of tournaments. You can feel the whole nation is just a bit nervous. And I think there was a bit of that at the Spain match creeping in, which maybe when England have played in tournaments before, because they've been in other countries, you know, we've not had that nervousness feeling. People have just enjoyed watching it. But I think because people kind of thought, we've got a chance of winning this now, you know, we've got a chance of maybe making the final. That Spain game, it was just a bit of like, oh, bit of nerves creeping in, and it crept into the game a little bit as well, perhaps. But again, once we got through that, and obviously the Sweden match was after that first 25 minutes, a lot sort of more straightforward than we were perhaps expecting. It was fantastic, to be fair. And I think I'd say the tournament did it. I'd say it matched my expectations. I said I was expecting it to kind of gain momentum. I'd perhaps say it maybe went beyond it, just because in terms of on the pitch anyway, I wasn't actually expecting England to win. And I think that obviously England doing well helped the rest of it kind of come together.
100%. I know Charlie's trying to come in, I think. I don't know whether if you want to unmute.
I'm here. I think I've tried to on the phone. It made like a really strange noise, which we've had before, Kathryn, where it's just been like my mic's gone crazy. Obviously, like you're someone who's been involved in sort of journalism with regards to women's football for quite a while. So you've sort of been there a little bit when it's been more difficult and maybe it hasn't got sort of the interest it's deserved. Has there been a change in how your job has sort of gone since the end of the Euros, even in that short period of time? Has your role changed at all, or has there been more demand for you and more demand for content from you already, or have we not sort of hit that stage yet?
I was definitely a lot busier than I ever have been during those 4 weeks in the tournament. This was actually my first tournament sort of working at it. Obviously, the 2019 one was sort of a bit just before I started working in journalism. Obviously, I've been doing the WSL for the last few years, and it has been probably slower than I would have liked and slower than, you know, for a lot of people. But we always knew, with it being a home Euros, that this was a fantastic opportunity when there wasn't a men's football tournament, there wasn't an awful lot of other sport going on, that if England could have, you know, a good ride, then, you know, there would be demand for pieces, for coverage, for interviews and stuff like that. So throughout the tournament, I was very, very busy. Sort of died down a little bit last week when some of the players obviously going on holiday and stuff like that. So get a bit of a break before the new season starts. But in terms of going forward, I think this now has to just be the time where we properly kind of commit to it and, you know, do as much as is, you know, humanly possible, because you've got to ride the wave while England have done well and while people's interest is high. you've got to try and keep that going. And the only way to build on what we've done already is to put more into it. So I'm hopeful for the season going ahead that there's, I'm going to hopefully keep being busy like I was during the summer, and fingers crossed that that the interest stays high and that there's the demand for extra stuff. Yeah.
You feel like if anything was going to have such a positive impact, it will be this, and hopefully with the World Cup coming so soon after, that will sort of keep the ball rolling. There's a bit of an off-piste one, which I'm just interested. Were you I think you were some of the post-match press conferences with Serena? What's she like? What's she like? She seems incredible, but what is it like being in a room with her?
It's funny because she doesn't give you much away. I think she's better in post-match press conferences than she is in pre-match press conferences. Because I'll be honest, semi-final pre-match press conference may have been one of the worst press conferences I've ever been, and I don't mean that in a offensive way. Just in the terms of she just wasn't giving anything. Like, I think someone asked, like, are England ready to make history, and their answer was, they're ready to play the best game against Sweden tomorrow, and that was it. But I think that approach worked for the players. Whereas obviously in the past we had Phil, where would maybe hype things up a little bit more and would obviously be probably better for the journalists in terms of writing stories. But sometimes that approach doesn't always work for the players, and I think Serena played everything down. She was good in post-match presses because you could kind of see her emotion a little bit more. Obviously being happy, she'd kind of obviously 2 feet on the ground and etc. But the post-match press conference for Spain was good because obviously you could tell that she'd been through a tough week having had COVID, and her celebration at the end of that game was something that we're not used to seeing from her. And she was kind of, she can be quite funny in her own little way. You wouldn't maybe expect her to be cracking jokes, but she can be quite funny. And one other thing that is obviously English isn't her first language. She always kind of makes sure she understands the question before she gives an answer, and she doesn't mind kind of being quite blunt with people. People say it's like a Dutch thing that she's a bit blunt, where they're just like, I don't understand your question, let's say it again, or say, can you reword it? So no, she is entertaining. Sometimes you're really kind of trying to get something from her just so we can write something, but obviously I think that approach works probably better for the players than it does for us.
No, 100%. Just very quickly on press conferences, I was going to bring Ellie's comment in, talking about. I saw your video of well, we've all seen it now. When the gate crashed, what was that like? Because I think it wasn't expected, but you kind of know when a major tournament win happens, the players are going to gate crash something, or whether it was, it was always going to happen. But what was that like? Just being in there, did you see them kind of come in beforehand, or did we expecting it, or was it just? Yeah.
We could hear them. We could hear them coming down the corridor. We could hear this like this chanting getting louder and louder and louder, and then the door just burst open with Lucy Bronze coming in, like jumping in the air, and you could just see all the players come in, because we obviously hadn't started the press conference yet, I think, or maybe we'd had like one or two questions, so we would still right at the start of it. So we hadn't really got anything. And it was funny because England came after Germany, and obviously all the English press needed quotes from Serena to file the quotes pieces, and we were on deadline. And we were like, this is all well and good, but can we speed this up slightly, because I've only got about 20 minutes to get some quotes from Serena and file this report. But no, it was great. It was just one of those moments where it was just great to be there and to say that you're in the room when it happened. And yeah, no, it was funny because Tooney was actually at the back, and I don't think she had her shirt with her, so she kind of like hid behind the rest of them and then ran out, which amused me quite a bit. But yeah, they were led by Lucy Brown, and obviously Mary Earps getting on the table. It was like being on a night out when your friends have had one too many and they get on the table and Mary's giving it like loads, which I thought was great. And the next day at the celebration at Trafalgar Square, they showed that video, and you could sort of see Mary looking up there like, but no, it was great, and yeah, just one of those brilliant moments to be there for.
Yeah, a lot of heavy sunglasses on the Trafalgar Square walk. Go on, Charlie.
Yeah, so I'm going off piste again here, but it's just you're at the game doing a job. You're there because you've got a job to do. But obviously, to be a football journalist, I'm assuming you must be a fan of football. When that final whistle went, how did you feel? Like, what was your initial feeling when that final whistle went and they'd won?
It was relief, because we'd had those 11 minutes of them kind of running the clock down. But do you know what's weird? Like when Tooney scored, I celebrated, I kind of got up and gave that a bit of a fist bump, because it was just such a good goal, and it kind of wasn't expected at the time during the game. And then obviously I was like, oh, I've gone too early. And because you're not really like, and obviously you don't usually celebrate in press boxes, but I think at international tournaments it sometimes can be a bit different. The Spain journalists were celebrating when they scored, so I thought it's fine for me to do the same. And then obviously Germany equalised, and I thought, right, I just thought Germany were going to win at that point, because we've just seen it so often. When Chloe scored, at first we didn't know if it was a goal as well, and then we did score. I was just sort of more in shock that compared to the first goal, we're actually kind of celebrated. And then it was just relief, and it was sort of like we all sat there. Obviously, I wasn't actually doing a match report. I was doing more like a colour piece, so I wasn't on pressure to file there and then. But sort of everyone around me was sort of like still busy typing away, and I just kind of like was sort of sat there shocked and was sort of like taking in the moment, because obviously Three Lions came on the system, and I just sort of watched the players sort of like celebrating and reacting with each other. It was great to just kind of like take in, because obviously as a fan, if I'd been in the crowd, I probably would have been, jumping around. But it was kind of great to just sort of watch that on the pitch just unfold, like everyone run onto the pitch to celebrate. It was just great.
Excellent. Kathryn, it's great to have you back on. I remember being sat here with you and John. It feels like not that long ago, to be honest with you. But it's been a fantastic tournament. We've all enjoyed it. And the point that we're trying to make at the moment now is about the legacy. What's going to come as a result of this, both as being a journalist, but also in terms of the football. And I was going to ask myself what you think that legacy is, and also whether we'll see that through attendances and things like that. But Luke comes in with a great point as well here. Are there going to be more journalists covering the WSL this upcoming season or not? Where do you think the legacy is going to be of this tournament, both in your profession and in the game itself?
Yeah, I think in terms of the journalists' world, we have to just try and do more. I think obviously it's difficult because a lot of outlets have only got one person kind of committed to women's football, to doing the reporting. So there's only one person at most outlets, and some outlets have one person, but they've got other roles as well. So it's hard for them to kind of balance everything to give it, the coverage that they kind of want to. I'd like to kind of see more games covered, because obviously I usually do one game a weekend, but there might be weekends when there's two great games on, you can only get to one. And that means obviously like you might have, I think there's the Manchester Derby this season, for example, is on the same weekend as the Merseyside Derby, perhaps. I might have got that wrong, but I think it might be. Now I've then got to choose which game do I go to. Do I go to the Manchester Derby? Do I go to the Merseyside Derby? Because we've not had the Merseyside Derby for a couple of years. One's I don't know, I can't remember if it's on the same day where it's Anfield and Etihad, or if it's different. But I'm sure there's a point in the season where they're on the same day, and that's we should be able to cover both of them really. So from that point of view, I think it's about more bodies in at different papers and at different outlets just covering it, so you've not got one person sort of stretched trying to cover the whole league. Because one of the things I felt a lot last season was there was so many teams I just didn't get to watch, because most weeks I was either doing Chelsea, Arsenal, City or United. I hardly saw teams like Reading, Everton, Brighton, teams, Villa. I don't even think I saw Villa play last season, and that was purely because the priority was with those teams at the top. But if you want the whole league to grow, you got to cover every team. You can't just kind of focus on the top four or the top five. So that's another thing as well. I'd like to try, and whether it's me kind of going out to see more of the other teams, or someone else doing it, I think that would be helpful as well. And then obviously, like, one of the things for me last year was a lot of the sort of interviews I got, they would go during the international break where there was sort of less stuff going on. But you kind of want to see it more consistently, sort of interviews, and that's where clubs kind of have to help, papers and journalists out as well in terms of granting access, because sometimes some clubs are better at others than doing it. Some clubs are great. Some clubs are quite difficult to try and get time with players, because that's usually what fans want to read, is interviews with players or pieces with managers. But and that's the type of stuff that will get in, our papers and our outlets as well. So the clubs we have to try and work together to try and get the best coverage possible. And then in the game itself, I think we've seen in the last week, obviously the players writing that letter to Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. We have to just make it possible for all girls to play football in school, and the fact that I think it's only about 66% or something like that at the minute is just sort of blows my mind, because I was always able to play football at school, so it seems ridiculous that there's other people up and down the country that can't. And then I think it's just continued investment from the clubs as well. I know that women's football clubs it's not profitable at the minute. It's not going to be, because it's a new business, and it's a new professional business anyway, and new businesses are never profitable right at the start, not very often anyway. So you have to keep investing to see, hopefully eventually see some kind of profit. So that's what the clubs have to do, and hopefully they do that. That's the route. Unfortunately, I know there's obviously clubs in the Championship that aren't connected to men's clubs that might be a bit more difficult, but it's important then that they're supported as well, because we saw obviously situations with Coventry last year where there's difficulties. So maybe in some cases where there's not a men's club attached, then maybe there has to be kind of fit and proper person tests brought in for owners of clubs like that.
You raise a good point, actually, in terms of, because Charlie, when we spoke to Phil last week, and Phil O'Connor, who's obviously a journalist, came over from Sweden for this Euros, and he talks about, because his time is very limited, he can only really watch the teams at the top. So it was Chelsea and Arsenal last season. I'm going to rephrase a question that we had written down very slightly in terms of it. There's been a lot of talk about, like I said, but when we talk about the legacy of the Euros and all these kinds of things, obviously a lot of people are just focusing on the very top. That, for me, has got to filter down, because otherwise, if you want the WSL to grow, let's say, to 14, 16 teams, you need the Championship teams to be able to compete in the WSL. I guess from a journalist point of view, and just from a footballing point of view, do you think the demand is going to be there following on, I don't know when the Championship starts. It's only in the WSL. It's a couple of weeks, I think 3 weeks away. Do you think that the demand is there, and that more, I know it comes back to time, and like you said there's sometimes only one per outlet. What more do you think can be done from that aspect to get more eyes on? Because the Championship, for me, is a very good league. There's a lot of good teams in there. What more do you think, off the back of the Euros, can be done from that point of view?
Well, I think that the next step, obviously, for the league is to try and professionalise the Championship. I know a lot more teams are going full-time now. I think probably from next season, there's only going to be a couple that aren't, full-time, or at least part-time, part full-time. So that's key. We need to expand the WSL. There needs to be more teams in it, as you said. And there's a lot of competitive clubs further down the pyramid. You look at someone like Wolves, who missed out on promotion despite winning their league, against another competitive club in Southampton. I think both of those clubs could have been ready to go up to the Championship and compete well, obviously both backed by Premier League clubs. So I think you need to try and make it easier for clubs to get promoted. To just have one team going into the Championship seems, a bit unfair. Can we make that division bigger, so there's more teams coming into the Championship? There's more teams then going into the WSL, because all the leagues are bigger. I think that's obviously the way to go in the future, but it's a case of that continued investment, and hopefully maybe after this season, the next season could be the time to expand those leagues. You would hope, off the back of what should be a successful season following the Euros. So as you say, the Championship's a competitive division. I think Liverpool had that advantage last year of obviously having that investment from the men's side. Not that it was ridiculous amounts, but it was obviously a lot more than probably what the other clubs had.
No, 100%. And I can see your comment. I know exactly who you're referring to. Keep an eye on. You don't know what to say, really, do you? Keep an eye on the next few days for Man United, I think, is just the thing on that. And we'll be live when I'm just going to name her, Tunkara, when she does get over the line. we'll be live covering that. But yeah, just next 48 hours, I think, on that one. Just keep an eye on that. I guess throwing it back to the tournament, then, in terms of, obviously, it's on the thumbnail, actually, obviously, record attendances. It was almost getting beaten pretty much every single week. There was another attendance broken, another, it was a group stage game, biggest for a non-home nation, and so on. Obviously, we saw the attendance at Wembley. What I guess do you think can follow on from that, pushing it into the WSL next season? We've seen some great progress with season tickets. We've seen record numbers there. We've seen things like that. But I do worry that there's a lot of, obviously now it's very fresh in people's mind. We're talking about it. But when it actually gets to the season, say, for example, obviously Man United are away at Spurs. If it absolutely chucks it down, it's a freezing cold day. Are people going to follow through with that because they bought the tickets 6 weeks in advance? So I guess just what you think. And also, do I guess journalists play a part, and not just journalists, like media and content creators, whoever it is, play a part in keeping the momentum going and not just having this? Because obviously now the Premier League's back on, the focus is back on, I guess, the top men's league and things like that. What do you think can be done to keep the stories coming, to keep the interest there while there's no games up until the start of the WSL season in particular?
I mean, in terms of keeping the interest going in this sort of gap period, obviously, I know England are playing at the start of September, which is a few weeks away. But I think a lot of the players will probably be coming back into pre-season. I know Man City are back into pre-season soon because they've got obviously Champions League qualifiers coming up. I know maybe some of the England players will have a little bit longer of a rest, but I think the onus is on the clubs. Have got to do everything they can to get bums on seats, really. And one thing that sort of frustrated me last week was Liverpool. I'd not checked to see if they're now on sale or not, to be fair, but start of last week, tickets for their Merseyside derby at Anfield weren't on sale yet, and you think you've missed a massive opportunity there for get them on sale before the Euros final, and then definitely have them on the day after they've won, because people are going to be going on thinking, oh yeah, where can I go and watch Liverpool Everton? I want to go to that game, and they'll buy it because it's fresh in their mind. I know City have their Etihad Manchester derby game where it was on sale, even though I know it's not till October, and the Merseyside derby is not till October. But if City can get their tickets on sale, how hard is it for Liverpool to do the same? So I think clubs have to be a bit more on the ball in that sense. I know some are doing a really good job. Arsenal obviously over 20,000 for the North London derby, and they've done really well in pushing it. In terms of kind of keeping the interest through the season, something Mark Skinner actually spoke well about last season was, I think clubs need to be better sometimes at actually putting on a match day, because you do get a lot of families. We know that a lot of women's football fans are kind of families. I know it's not all families, and I know it's there's a wide range of supporters, but we have to kind of try and make match days a bit better around the stadiums, because a lot of people, going to the Euros have probably been attracted by the bigger grounds that they're going to, Brighton, Southampton, Wembley, Old Trafford. These are huge stadiums. Is maybe the interest going to be there for, going to the Tottenham don't play at the Hive anymore, but Leighton Orient's ground, or, Lee Sports Village, or even the Academy Stadium, which is a good little ground, but is the interest going to be there for, those going to these smaller stadiums? Obviously, they've not quite got the appeal of Old Trafford, but what you have to do then instead is actually put on more around the ground, try and get stuff that's kind of, as I say, like just kind of stuff going on around the ground, have a fan zone or something like that. Or I know Lee's a bit difficult because you kind of got shops and stuff around it, but just you need to kind of try and put more on to keep that interest there. And that's something Mark said, obviously they do that in America really well, where it's like it feels like an actual match day, not just you go to the game and then you leave again. So that's one thing as well. And yeah, clubs just have to try and keep pushing it. And I know one issue that fans had last season was obviously buying tickets wasn't straightforward, because you had to sign up for a membership of different clubs, and they make you jump through about 10 hoops before you can actually buy a ticket for the game. I hope now that it's easier now to buy tickets. When I've gone on the websites, when I was on United's website the other week, it seemed quite straightforward. Obviously, I didn't actually go through with buying it, but it looked quite straightforward. You just click a link. Tottenham earlier today had a link, get your tickets here. So hopefully that's something the other clubs, are doing as well, where it is easy to buy tickets. Because, if you have to click about 6 different things, sign up to an email, it's going to put people off. So and I know Ian Wright mentioned that on BBC as well. So they have to try and make it as easy as possible for people to go to the games.
I'm still getting emails from West Ham. It just honestly kills me. I'm like, just leave me alone, will you, please? One of the things I just wanted to sort of bring up, Charlie actually put this into one of our group chats earlier, and it's not been mentioned over the whole 2 hours, and I think it's a really interesting point. I'm presuming she got it from a reputable news source and not like Viz or something like that. But basically what it's talking about is a sponsorship deal for one of the Lionesses, saying that there's been a bit of a knock-on effect already because there was a male England counterpart who had a sponsorship deal, and when they offered it to the Lioness, it was less than that person. It was like, oh, come on, this is a little bit out of order. So they offered to match it. And then quite cleverly, they went, yeah, but this guy hasn't won the European Championships, has he? She has. And she's actually come out of it with a deal that's worth more than that of her male counterpart, which was the last line of it. And I thought that was really cool. That's something really good. And I use that really more as a lead-in into... really, I suppose, just to sort of bring it together a little bit more. Do you see an explosion coming for women's football really to take the place that I think it deserves? Because I've just been thoroughly entertained over the last 12 months watching this sport, and it's just football, and I love it. Do you think there's going to be an uptick?
Yeah, definitely. That was a story was in our paper today, so thank you for mentioning that. But yeah, no, I think it was definitely, it was, you can see already that players have been in demand. And that just shows you the fact that, not a player has been offered a contract. They've negotiated it. They've negotiated a better deal because they're in that position of power. And the brand has gone, yes, all right, we'll give you what you want. So that's huge. And, I think these winners of the England team are in a very good position now to go and kind of make, and I think brands are realizing their commercial value as well. So, I mean, you'll probably be in a position where a lot of the players are probably making more off, deals with brands than they are with them from being paid by their individual clubs and stuff like that, which is mental. I know obviously the Times had an interview with Russo, and I think it was said in there that she could make about $1 million from like brand endorsement deals, which isn't bad. I mean, to be fair, she could live off that back heel for the rest of her life. She could retire now and just live off that, to be fair. So, but no, I think 100% there's going to be, it's a very good time to be one of those England players. I think there's going to be kind of everyone after them. And yeah, I think going forward, it's, as I say, they're in a very strong position financially.
No, 100%, and that was a great little thing to read. Thanks, Charlie, for pushing it our way and making us aware of that. I've only got two final questions actually, unless anyone else has got jumping on. Taking that
If you're about to ask the question I was thinking of asking, but I'll see what you do first.
Mine was the wrap-up question. Before I just want to ask one question on United after that, but. Did you have something different in mind, or are you?
Well, I was the moment. I don't think we've asked Kathryn what her moment of the tournament was yet. Just as a fan, just as someone who loves the football, what did you reckon? What was your highlight of the tournament?
I think obviously like winning it definitely, but it has to be that Spain game because I thought we were going out, and I was obviously when you're writing a match report and you're on deadline. You have to kind of send the report on 80 minutes if it's not a draw. And at 80 minutes, England were losing. So I had essentially written a report saying this tournament was a failure and that, it's not going to be remembered and that, it's dreadful. And I was thinking, I sat there with a few of the other journalists, Molly, who obviously, from the Times, we were sat there thinking, this is going to be awful. Like, the interest's going to die. We'll have nothing to do for the rest of the tournament. Everything's going to go like that. And I was, like, no joke, my finger was hovering over the send button for this email, and I looked up, and I had not seen the approach play to the goal, the equaliser. I just looked up and I just saw Toon's foot and it ball go in the back of the net, and I was like, okay, I'm not sending that. Start rewriting. And while it was stressful, it was great because I thought when we equalised, I thought we're going to go on and win this now. And it was just that's how much it turns from the 1 minute the tournament being a failure to we end up winning the game, and it's everyone's excited because we're in the semi-final, and that's how close it was, and that's how different it could have been. So I think it has to be that moment because obviously coming on United thing anyway, mentioning sort of that Russo-Toon combination will go down well. But no, just because I was just such relief. Like I felt more relieved for that goal because it would have been but like selfishly for me, it would have been a disaster if England had gone out in the quarter-final just in terms of covering it. So that really kind of saved us. And I didn't actually give that one a celebration in the press box, but inside I was sort of going like this. And Tom Guy was sat next to me, and we did a little fist bump after that goal. So yeah, that was a good one.
It's a nightmare when you're writing those things, like you say, and then it just changes right at the end. That's happened once or twice to me before. Before you jump in, Con, I just wanted to point out one moment that hasn't been mentioned yet. I thought it might be, but it hasn't. And that was Russo's little peek over the shoulder of the Germany player when the note came on. I didn't know Russo could speak German, but what a moment. Love it.
Yeah, or the Jill Scott in the far, quite like that as well. That's not been mentioned either. So certainly that one I'm not gonna. Somebody tweeted earlier, didn't they? They got a T-shirt, like if you know kind of thing. I saw earlier. That was quite cool. There's a question here, Kat. It kind of ties in before we end this show and let you get off. Obviously, talking now, obviously from a United point of view, moving a little bit away from the Euros, just to wrap up with a little bit of United talk. Obviously, our transfer window probably will end once Tunkara's over the line, unless you're going to tell me any different. But just looking ahead at contracts and things like that, obviously we know that Russo rejected before the Euros very smartly, in my opinion, because now she's worth 10 times what she was probably offered before. Obviously Honor, Jackie as well. What do you think on those players' contracts, and also I guess United's window as a whole, from looking at it maybe from a different angle to the three of us?
Well, I think they'll probably make the offer to players like Honor and Jackie. Honor, especially because she's a player you would want to keep at the club. Whether they decide to extend is not really certain at the minute. But obviously Honor staying for this season, and Jackie seems to be sort of at the minute we're not really sure what will happen. But Russo again is another one that again they'll definitely offer the contract. Whether they can. I think, to be honest, I think it's just going to have to be a case of let Russo write the number, and you're going to have to pay it if you want it to stay. But yeah, for the other players coming back, I think Honor will definitely probably be offered one. If she indicates she wants to leave at the end of the season, that could be the way she wants to go. So, as I say, I think the offers will be made. Whether they'll be accepted remains to be seen. The window generally, I think there's been some good signings. I think attacking wise, I think United are looking quite strong. I think Garcia is an interesting signing. I'm interested to see where she'll fit in, whether you'll have her and Russo, whether she'll force Russo wide, or whether you play with the two through the middle, or whether Garcia can play out wide. I'm not really sure, because I think based off the Euros, you have to kind of start Russo in that centre forward position. I wouldn't want her moving out to the right or the left, really. So it's where you then fit in Garcia. Is she going to come off the bench, or can they play together? I know Nikita Paris has been a controversial signing in terms of whether it's a good signing or not. I think that's just one that time will tell. I think she could be a signing that's brilliant for United. I think she's a perfect Mark Skinner player because she's a hard worker. She's fast. She'll, she's. We know that maybe she won't be clinical. Maybe she'll miss a couple of chances, but she should keep getting in the positions. And I think you just kind of have to try and give her a chance. And if she can get back to that form that she showed sort of before she went to Lyon and when she was at Lyon, I know she's had a difficult couple of years, but you don't get signed for Lyon if you're no good. So if she can get back to that form, then that could be a very good signing on what wasn't much money. I mean, Maya Letitia probably has to be the best signing for me, just because of what a steal it was. That release clause, sort of between 50,000-60,000, somewhere in between there, for a player that's probably going to be a future England international, and someone that could well have a chance of trying to force her way into that squad for the next World Cup. I think she's going to be a really, really good player. So I think that was a really good bit of business. And Grace Clinton, another young player who has a lot of potential as well. So I actually think United's window's been good. I know, as I say, sort of maybe Clinton is one that might be in and around the first team, but whether she's going to be starting every week isn't certain. If you can, assuming no players leave and that's sort of it, I don't think it's been a bad window. I can understand maybe people would want more because of the strength of the competition, but if that one more deal over the line, as we say, and other players leave, then I don't think that's too shabby of a window for United.
No, 100%. I agree on Maya. I actually think Maya pushes away into the starting 11 for United next season as well. Just very briefly as well, before we wrap up, I don't usually do this, but because Luke has been with us from literally the first minute, he's watched all 2 hour, 10 minutes of this, just on Spurs' window as well.
Yeah, very impressive. Obviously they had a good year last year with Ryan Skinner. I'm interested to see kind of how they set up this year, because we know Tottenham are very much a team that kind of set up to defend, hit on the break, maybe use their aerial strength. Obviously, they've lost Rachel Williams now, who's a player I didn't mention in that window talk. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how their style changes, whether they'll look to play more on the front foot, or whether they'll keep that kind of that style of play that we were so used to seeing last year. Obviously, they've not got that pretty awful pitch at the Hive anymore, which kind of was a bit of a leveler against sort of teams like City and stuff. So that'll be interesting. But no, I think they've kind of recruited well. They'll definitely obviously fancy a top 3 challenge, obviously with yourselves, and I was going to say maybe Brighton, but actually I think I'm not sure they'll really be up there in the same. They'll be up there, but I don't think they'll, in terms of top 3, I would say United and Tottenham are the two that most likely to really challenge the last year's top 3. So interesting times ahead.
No, 100%. And yeah, I agree with Martin. I think Spurs' window, outside of the big 3, I think is a very strong window. Kathryn, thanks so much for coming on. If people want to find your work and follow you on socials and things like that, where can people find all of that?
Well, just my name is there on Twitter and Instagram. It's got a 96_, but I'm sure if you type my name in, you'd find me. And yeah, just obviously in the mail. Hopefully, fingers crossed, a good amount of coverage for the season ahead.
No, 100%. And I'm sure you'll be back on here at some point throughout the WSL season and so on, because there's lots to talk about, and hopefully a successful United season, but hopefully a successful season from the legacy of the Euros, as the title has been. We've been speaking, the 3 of us have been here for 2 hours, 10 minutes now. So we are going to wrap this up. Thank you to Barry and Charlie for co-hosting this with me, because it's been one hell of a show. We don't usually do 2 hour specials, but we've got there in the end. Obviously, thanks to Ellie and John, who opened up the show with us, and to Becky, who came on, and to Alex and Nancy, who also came on as well. Make sure you're hitting the like button. Let's aim for 20 likes. Come on. We've been going for 2 hours, 20. Let's hit 20 likes on this. We'll be back. We've got a show coming out. I've recorded a show with an Arsenal fan that will come out very soon, talking about the key to Paris. So keep an eye on that one. That was a fantastic show to keep an eye out for. And obviously we'll be live when Tunkara goes live. Regardless of all of that, Barry will be back on Friday. Not from the M6 this time. It'll actually be streaming from stable Wi-Fi and not some services on the M6. So he'll be back for a fans forum with a lot of United fans talking all things United. Right, I'm going to stop talking because I'm getting out of breath now because talking for so long. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys very soon.